Okay guys, in this tutorial we are going to build a performance tire for any vehicle really. And in the lecture after this, or tutorial after this, I'm going to build this Mercedes AMG rim as well. So we're going to start by building not exactly this tire, but a tire that kind of looks like this based on this tire tread pattern here. And then in the next video we're going to go ahead and build this this rim here. Alright, so why don't we go ahead and get started. What we first need to do is I'm going to go into my top orthographic viewport and I'm going to create a polygon primitive and I'm going to do a plane. I want to turn on my snaps to grid here, so my grid snaps, that I'm going to snap my plane so that it's right at the origin for the center of the plane. And then I'm also holding down the shift key to make it completely square. It's just kind of easier in Maya, pretty much any 3D program for that matter, if you always make your reference images that you're going to texture map square and then make your reference plane square as well. What that avoids you from doing is kind of distorting the image, as I can show you here in 1 second. I'm going to right click on my plane now that I've got it created, and I'm going to say assign new material. And I'm going to select a Lambert material here, and then I'm going to click on the little check pattern here to the right of the color node, and what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to map an input to the color attribute for that material, and I'm going to choose to map a file. So I'm going to click on file, and then now I need to tell it what file I'm going to use for the color input. And so I have to navigate to my file path. So I'm going to click on this little folder. That's going to allow me to do that. And then I'm just going to double click right here on the Mr. UTeacher Tire Tread Ref 1 JPEG. And that's been mapped to the polygon in here. All I have to do is hit the 6 key to see the hardware shaded view. And we can see here that there's my image and it's mapped in and it's undistorted. So what I mean by undistorted is that its aspect ratio of the image is actually the same as the one I created in Photoshop. So what happens is if you create your reference plane and you do it non-square, and then you do your image non-square, what will often happen is your image, or either your image will get squashed or your plane is squashed and it'll squash your image. So what we do here, see, it's very subtle. You can have just like even like a 20% squash on this, and that will throw your entire model off. So what we like to do here is just always make this 100% square, and then we know that that everything's going to be copacetic and we're never going to get anything squashed and distorted. Alright, so now I'm going to go into my top ortho. I'm going to hit the 6 key so that I can see my reference image in there as well, and then I'm going to select my plane and hit the E key, and I'm going to rotate this guy just 90 degrees. So I'm going to do a negative 90 in Y, and then what I want to do is I want to scale this thing up, and I just kind of want to get it so that it's a little bit bigger, and that looks pretty good to me. Alright, and so then I'm going to go ahead and pop back out to the perspective view. Just take a look at everything. Everything looks good. And now we're in a position here where we can go ahead and we can kind of start making our tire treads for our tire. So I'm going to pop into the top ortho, and if I look here from the top, we kind of have this tread, and it's not exactly symmetrical on both sides. We have this side and C, and then it kind of offsets on the other side. So if it were symmetrical, these two tongues here would meet and they're kind of offset. So we got to keep that in mind when we're building this. And then the tread is kind of a weird shape here, and it's probably going to be a little bit of a trick to tile this. So I want to kind of teach you guys how to make something so that you can tile it easily. Alright, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create a polygon primitive, and I'm going to do a cube. And I kind of like to just hold down the shift key and make it completely square. Don't ask me why I do that, it's just what I like. And then I'm going to kind of move my tire image here out of the way a little bit. And then I'm going to select my box that I just made, and I'm going to say face. And I just want to select the bottom of that guy and delete it. And then what I want to do is I want to hit the insert key, and I want to change my pivot point for this box so that it's at the base of the box. And the reason I'm doing that is so that when I scale this down, I don't want to have to keep adjusting the position of the base of it versus the rest of the box. So I want it to scale from the base. So I'm just going to scale this down, and I kind of am eyeballing this, but tire treads are generally, I believe the exact measurement is 9/32, which is just a little over 1/4 of an inch. So for your tire tread height, you want to make it about 1/4 of an inch if it's a new tire, and then you can go down from there. If you want to show a little wear, you can make it less than. Alright, so we got our first tread built here, and I'm going to go into my top ortho now, and I'm going to go to View, and under Shading I'm going to select X-Ray here so that we can kind of see through everything. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into Edge Mode actually first, and what I want to do is I want to extrude this base here out a little bit. So I'm going to just select the base all the way around, and then I'm going to say I'm going to go into my polygon menu set right here, and I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, and I'm going to say Extrude, and then I'm going to pull this out here a little bit. And currently my snaps were on, so I don't want it to snap, but I just want to basically pull this thing out so it's about half the distance of one of these tire treads here. So kind of just about halfway between there, and that looks pretty good. Alright, now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I know that later I want to apply a bevel to this object because I don't want just this hard edge because it's not going to look very real. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the bevel on the object before I start shaping it. And the reason I'm doing it that way is because the bevel can get a little weird if you start getting kind of a misshapen object. So if I go and distort all these, for example like this one, and I go to apply a bevel in Maya, the bevel isn't exactly going to work the way I want, and then I'm going to spend a little bit more extra time than I want to pulling points and stuff. And so I'm going to do it this way. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and go to Edit Mesh, and I'm going to add a bevel, and I want to show you a new method here that I've started using, and it's working pretty well. And this method is where you actually double bevel things. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I want to show you something as well, is I'm going to open up the bevel settings, and if I reset this back, there's one setting here that can be a little bit annoying, and it's this button right here, fractional prevents inside out bevels. And what that does is it's going to attempt to stop the bevel. So I'm going to say apply. It attempts to stop the bevel before it gets to the point where it can kind of go inside out. And on this example it's not quite clear what happens, but if you have something that's kind of a compound shape and you add a bevel to it and you kind of get stuck and you can't dial it any farther than you want, it's because of that setting. So the first thing I like to do with the bevel tool is go into Edit Mesh, Bevel. I'm going to reset this back. So this is what it looks like at first. I'm going to change this setting here from fractional to absolute. And now watch what happens when I do absolute. I'm going to say apply. And this is kind of weird because it allows you to bevel, and you can actually set the offset so it explodes well outside the bounds of your box. But what it does do is that sometimes that thing is inaccurate and it doesn't let you do as deep of a bevel on it as you want, as well as you may just want to bevel it deeper and then weld the verts or something later. So I like to turn that off. All right, and I'm going to do like a 0.1 or something, maybe a little bit less, 0.05, and maybe 0.075. There we go, that looks pretty good. Alright, so I beveled this once, and then what I want to do is I want to turn around and bevel this again. And you might say, well, why not just increase the number of segments on the bevel slider? And the answer on that is that this one, if you do a double, it just produces a slightly better. So if you did just increase the segments, what would happen is that some of these polygons down here would kind of get stretched and they wouldn't look that great. And so I like to do this as a double bevel pass. The other thing that this allows you to do is you can kind of preview your work ahead of time. So if I hit the 3 key, I can kind of see what my bevel is going to look like smooth before I commit the changes. And so I don't know, I just like the method, it works well. So I've selected all the faces that I just beveled, and now I'm going to go to select, and I'm going to say convert selection to edges. So where is it? Convert selection to edges, and then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to bevel this again. So I'm going to go to edit mesh, and I'm going to say bevel, and notice that it flips out on me. That's okay, because I'm going to go in here and dial this down myself. So the last one was a 0.075, so I'm going to try that as a starting space. I'm going to go to about half of that, so I'll do a 0.035, and that's getting pretty good. What I'm looking for here is I just want to end up with a triangle in here, and it's still kind of self-intersecting a little bit, so I'm going to go a little lower. I'm going to say 0.03, and I can't really see that triangle in there. It's very tiny, so I'm going to go a little bit lower than 0.03. I'm going to go 0.0, maybe 28, and there, that looks pretty good. What I'm looking for is just kind of equal spacing between all the edges here. And then if you'll notice, I have a very clean set of internal polygons here, and that's what I'm looking for. If I would have beveled that and just increased the segments, these edges just would have been stretched out and just not quite as clean. Alright, so this is a better way to go, in my opinion. Okay, so I got my little tire tread here beveled out, and then now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate that tread. So first I'm going to kind of position it though. So these bevels here represent the corners of the tread. I'm going to hit my insert key again, and I just want to change my pivot point here to be back at the base of this guy, and then I want to scale it down so it matches the extent of that first tread here that I'm building. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control D and I'm going to duplicate it, and then what I want to do is I want to line it up with the extent of the second tread here. Okay, and then I want to scale it down a little bit as well so it lines up with the extent of the edge of the second tread, and then I'm going to hit Control D again, and I'm going to line it up with the final tread, and then I'm going to scale it so that the outside edge lines up with the edge of the longest outside tread there that comes to the middle. Okay, now I'm going to select all my objects, and I'm going to turn on wireframe unshaded so that I can actually see my treads here. And now I'm to the point here where I am ready to go ahead and combine these guys. So I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to say Mesh Combine, and then I'm going to go into Edge Mode here, and actually I don't want to do it via Edge Mode, I'm going to do it via Vertex Mode. I'm going to select these two verts here, and I'm going to say Edit Mesh, and I'm going to do a Merge to Center. And the way Merge to Center works is it's just going to merge all the verts that you have selected, and so that's why I'm only selecting a couple at a time. Alright, so I got all these verts welded down, and then now what I want to do here is I just want to grab these verts here on the outside, and because these are the exterior, I'm going to expand those out to match up with my illustration here. And then for these guys, I just want to make sure that this is the distance on this is about halfway between the respective treads, and so I'm just going to pull that in just a little bit. Alright, now we're ready to start shaping our tread out. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start subdividing the mesh. And in order to shape these treads, we're going to need to add some extra edge loops. So I'm going to go ahead and edit edge, or edit mesh, and I'm going to say Insert Edge Loop Tool. And I want to open up my dialog because I was using this earlier today, and I want to make sure I reset that. Okay, and I'm just going to add one, kind of two, maybe three edges here, and then for this one I can probably get away with 1, 2, 3. And then for this one, I'm going to do the same. 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. This one's got a little bit more shape to it, so I'm going to add some more. Okay, so now I'm going to get out of insert edge loop mode, and I'm going to go ahead and just grab these new verts here that I created, and I just want to flatten all these guys down here. I don't want them spreading out like they are, so I'm just going to kind of flatten them all down. I'm not being too precise here. I'm just want to flatten these so that we don't have this where the edges are kind of flaying out to the side like that. All right. And now that I've got that done, now I can start shaping this. So I'm going to grab the tread in the top ortho. I'm going to go into Vertex Mode here. And I'm just going to kind of distort this thing. And we can actually do these all one by one, or all at once, because they're all kind of going to the same direction. And I'm not being totally religious about having this line up 100%, if you'll notice. Because this is really just a guideline, so it's just kind of think of this as like a this illustration as just like a helper rather than an absolute. Just keeps us kind of on target and building something a lot faster than we would otherwise. So I like to tell my students sometimes that you know, if you were a contractor building buildings for a living, and someone came to you and said, I want you to build my house or building, and then they asked you to do it without a set of blueprints, would you take the job? And of course everyone says no, you know, you can't build a house without blueprints. And then I say, well, why would you build a model then in 3 dimensions, or a video game or anything for that matter, without a set of instructions? And the answer is you shouldn't, but it's kind of amazing how many people do. I've actually worked at game companies where they asked me to build something, and then I'd say, well, you guys have a storyboard? And they'd say, no. And I said, well, do you want me to do one for you? And then they said, no, we just wing it. And I only worked there for like 3 days. And then the company went out of business. So maybe that is a testament to how effective that strategy is. So anyway, if you want to build things efficiently and to a high quality, for my money, you're always going to start with some sort of a blueprint. And you don't always have to use a photo reference. In fact, why would you? Especially if you were building a stylized asset, such as like Pixar or an animated film. Then what you would do is you would use your character sketches that your design team puts together in order to define your characters, and you would create your blueprint from that, right? So and it's all valid. It's just all about having some sort of a spec before you get into the computer, because if you don't have a spec before you get into the computer, you're going to run into trouble. You can trust me on that. It's going to turn out half as good, and it's going to take 6 times as long. Alright, so I'm just rotating up these edges here a little bit to try to fix those up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the 3 key to smooth this out, and I want to preview my work. Because for this demo, everything I'm building as a control cage mesh that I'm fully intending to smooth out at a later date if I need to. Okay. So we got our first tread built here, and it looks pretty good. Now what we need to do is we need to make this thing so that it's tileable, all right? And this becomes a little bit trickier because this is a little bit of an irregular shape that we have going here. So I'm going to teach you a little trick for making sure that this tiles. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the insert key. I'm going to hold down the V key here, and I'm going to snap that pivot point to the first vertex of my tire tread patch here. And then I'm going to hit the insert key to get back out of it. I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate this. And now I'm going to hit the W key to move it, but I'm going to hold down my V key for snap to vertex. And I accidentally put this on the wrong vertex, so I want to hit the insert key one more time. I'll hold down the V key for snap to vertex, and I want to snap it to that first vertex there. So I hit the insert key again to get out of insert mode, and now I'm going to hold down the V key, and I want to snap this backwards so that it kind of lines up with the other one. And that didn't work, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull this back out so that it lines up with the second pattern. Okay? And then what I want to do is I want to duplicate this one again, and this time I want to move it backwards so that it lines up with the pattern from the other side. Okay? And then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to select my center tread, and I want to make sure that before I do this that I offset these guys the exact same distance. So this one I move 7.5. I want to make sure that I move this one a negative 7.5. Okay, and what that's going to do is that's going to ensure that they've both been spaced out the same equal distance. All right, and for our intents and purposes that's completely fine, because as I said, this illustration back here is more or less just a guide. Okay, so now that these have been spread out equally, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here into the perspective viewport. I'm going to hide my reference plane here for a second because I don't really need it anymore. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start moving these vertices around. So I'm going to go into Vertex Mode. I'm going to select this vertex, hold down the V key, and I want to just snap these verts to the vertices of the mesh in front here. And I just realized that that's not what I wanted to do. Alright, I forgot. I actually want to go ahead and I'm going to combine these guys first. So I'm going to say Edit Mesh, or Mesh, Combine. And then what I want to do here is now I'm going to use the Collapse Merge to Center feature. Because what the Merge to Center feature is going to do here is it's going to allow me to take these vertices, say Edit Mesh, Merge to Center, and it's going to kind of split the difference between the distances perfectly. And what that's going to do is it's going to actually find that center line that I could have spent hours trying to find by sitting there and moving points around until I got all these to line up. Or I can just come in here, merge these guys, merge to center on all the vertices on both sides of the scene. And this will work with a pattern that is even much more complicated than this one. Alright. So you can really knock yourself out. I just kind of chose this one because it was interesting enough. And it wasn't going to take me that long to build it. You know, no one wants to watch a 3-hour tutorial. In fact, the ones that I've been doing, you know, running around an hour to hour and a half, and I think certainly that doesn't even fit the YouTube format, which is about 10 or 15 minutes. But I'm of the mind that what can you get done in 15 minutes, and the answer is not much, especially in 3D. So I'm going to try to keep these around an hour. So what I've done here is I've merged the center points on both sides of these. They were offset the exact same distance. And so now what happens is when I go into face mode here and I select all these faces on either side of my mesh, and I'm going to hit delete, and I got a few strays here, so I'm going to delete those. And then I'm going to go do the exact same thing on the other side. So I want to select all my faces here. I'm holding down Shift and Control to add to the selection. Missed one back here, so I'm going to select that one. So Shift and Control, and I'm selecting more faces here. And what I'm doing is I just really created these duplicate copies here as kind of temporaries so that I could find that center line between the tire treads, and so that I wouldn't have to hunt and peck around for it. Alright, so now what I've done here is I've separated my tread. Probably be a good idea for me to delete the history on this. If we look over here under the channel box, look at that history, it's getting kind of crazy. So I'm going to delete the history. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my pivot point again. So I'm going to hold down my V key and snap it to the beginning here, like I did last time. And I'm going to hit Control D, and then I'm going to go to V again for snap to vertex. And this time when I duplicate it, look what happens. And this, I'm going to change the pivot point again to be at the front here, this one now. And I'm going to duplicate it, hold down the V key. And look at this, they line up absolutely perfectly. And so what this means is now that I can create multiple copies of this one tread, forward or backward, and they're going to line up perfectly, and all I'm going to need to do in order to merge them is first just go to Mesh, Combine, go to Vertex Mode here, select the entire thing, and then say Edit Mesh, Merge, and I can use my default settings here, which is a very low threshold, 0.01, which basically means, hey, if these verts are right on top of each other, they're going to weld. And then when I do that, there we go, the whole thing's welded, and I can demonstrate that by selecting one of the edges and pulling them up, and you can see here that it's connected. So what I've just done here is I've made my life very easy by doing that. Alright, so now let's analyze our tread. We got our one tread built, and now it tiles perfectly. Our next phase of this adventure is I want to duplicate this guy, change the pivot again. And if you'll notice on my tread pattern, if we look from side to side, as I noted when we first started, the treads are not the same across, they actually stagger. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to move this tread forward, and now I'm going to select this tread and I want to duplicate it, but this time I'm going to mirror it across here, so across the Z axis. So I'm going to say Edit, Duplicate Special. I'm going to open up my settings, reset them here for a second, and it goes X, Y, Z. So I want to negative scale this one in Z, so I'm going to say Apply. And see how that thing snapped beautifully right across the aisle there, and it actually lines up. So I just got lucky on that one. Normally it doesn't line up, and I'd have to do the same thing I did last time, but it kind of lines up. And so now what I need to do here is I need to stagger this. So if we look at the pattern, the point of the other one kind of goes into the trough of the other one. So there's the point of the tread, and the opposite side it kind of goes into the trough for the offset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line that up, and what I want to do here is I need to, if you'll notice, we have these points here that come down this edge flow, and then they line up here, but I don't have an edge to complete. And maybe if I turn off my grid and turn off my pattern behind, we can kind of see this a little better. So I have this edge flow. If I go and select it, it goes down the line here, but the vertex here where it connects basically has no edge flow to line up with it. So I actually need to put that in there. So I'm going to go into my Edit Mesh, and I'm going to say Insert Edge Loop Tool. And what I want to do is I want to insert this edge loop as close as I can to that set of vertices here, and see it runs the edge loop all the way out the side. Okay. And then I need to also, on this one, see there's no edge loop that runs down, but I have a vertex here that I need to weld. So same thing on this other mesh over here. I need to go in here and I need to insert an edge loop, and I want it to be as close to that vertex as possible. Alright. And so now what's going to happen here is I want to combine these two. And what I want to, or actually I'm going to do it this time without combining them. What I'm going to do here is, no, I lied again. I keep forgetting the steps. I'm going to go ahead and combine this, and then I'm going to go into Vertex Mode. And because these vertices are so close together, but see how they're not actually welded? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to weld them. So I'm going to say Edit Mesh, and I'm going to use my merge to center, because remember it mathematically splits the difference between them. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm just going to hit G this time. And then what I'm going to do here is by doing it in this manner, I've also guaranteed, again, that if I delete these extra faces here, that when I mirror this guy again, it's going to line up perfectly because I used the merge to center, which is basically splitting the difference mathematically. So it seems a little weird. Why does he keep combining those and then deleting them? And the answer is because it's going to make your life easier downstream, and it allows you to take a kind of a complex pattern and get it to line up so that we can repeat it again. And then I've got all these strays here, so I'm going to select these guys and delete them. Alright, so now let's check our work. I've got my pattern here, and okay, so I'm fixing my pattern here, and I had the problem where the interior vertex was not lining up, and the approach I was taking there was actually a little bit roundabout, although eventually it would have worked. I have found a little bit simpler way here to resolve this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete the polygons off the back of this guy. And I'm going to get rid of all these stragglers. Okay, and now what I want to do here is I just want to make it so that this tread tile, so right now I have my pattern on the left, and now I have my offsetting pattern on the right. We have the vertices all lining up, and we've got the proper number of edges. And so now what I want to do here is I'm going to select this guy. I got my pivot right there at the front portion of the tread. I'm going to hit Control D, and then I'm going to hold down my vertex key so that I snap it right up to the vertex on the next one. And there's an easier way to fix that where the vertices were not lining up completely. And that's just for me to go ahead and go into vertex mode here and grab the offending vertex here and just snap it to the vertices of the ones behind. And that's going to solve it now if I go ahead and delete that for each successive duplication. So I'm going to hit Control D, and I'm going to hold down my V key, and there we go. I can check my work. It looks like it's solved. If I go into vertex mode and I frame it, there we go. Those guys are lined up perfectly right on top of each other. There's a little bit of discrepancy on this side, on that one. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab, same thing, I'm going to grab this vertex here, I'm just going to hold down V and snap it to the other one. I don't know how these got off, but I'm just going to snap them. Something must have happened when I was moving this, but anyway, within reason, they're actually very close, and now they're going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and now I got my tileable pattern here. At this point, I can hit Control D and duplicate, hold down my V key for snap to vertex, and I'm snapping it so that it perfectly lines up right with that one. At this point, I could go ahead and use my duplicate width transform, Shift D, and I can start making my treads. Now would probably be a good time for me to start counting out how many treads I need to make. So I'm going to turn my reference image here, and I'm going to pop into the perspective viewport, and I'm just going to do some counting here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 treads, okay? So 14 treads, but I'm only looking at a quarter of the tire from this vantage point, all right? Because this is essentially a box shot. So I'm looking at the back of the tire. If I moved my camera 90 degrees, I'd be looking at the top of the tire. If I moved my camera 90 degrees, I'd be looking at the front of the tire, and if I moved my camera 90 degrees, I'd be looking at the bottom of the tire. So the number of treads here only represents one side of the tire, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 times 4. So that's going to total 52. All right. So what I like to do is I like to do 13 at a time. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. So I'm just going to grab this last one here and I'm going to duplicate it again. Hold down my V key to snap it to that vertex that I so painstakingly made sure it would tile. And then I'm going to go ahead and duplicate some more of these. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and two too many, so I'm going to delete those. And then now I'm going to select everything, except for I don't want to select my pattern. So I'm going to reference my plane there. And now I can merge this or combine it. So I'm going to say Mesh, Combine, make it all one piece. Before I do that though, I want to introduce you guys to a concept here that's pretty smart. And that is, I'm going to duplicate my tread and I'm going to make a layer of it and hide it. And the reason I just did that is because if I made a mistake somewhere along the line, I can always get back to that tread. Alright, so you guys should always do that. It's kind of similar to the approach of making a new Photoshop layer before you're about to manipulate a layer. Same thing in Maya. I always duplicate the object, create a new layer, and then hide it. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and combine these guys. I'm going to go into Vertex Mode, select the entire tread. And what we want to do here is we want to weld all of those verts together, because right now we've duplicated all these, but these vertices are not welded, and I can show that by selecting one of these edges and pulling it out. There we go. I found one that's I think what was happening is I'm actually selecting both the edges simultaneously because they're so close together. So we finally got one that would break, so I'm going to undo that. So what I want to do here is I want to go to Vertex Mode, select all the verts in my scene, and then I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Merge, and I'm going to use a threshold setting that's very low. I'm going to do like a 0.05, and I want to get into kind of my closest polygons here and make sure that they do not weld. That was too much. So I'm going to undo, and I'll try the default setting, which is 0.01, and notice how that was too close because it actually welded my verts here at the front of my poly chamfer or bevel. And so I'm going to do a 0.005 and say apply, and there we go. Now all my verts that are super close together have welded, but my other verts that are also close together have not welded. Alright, and so that's just one patch of my tire. Now would be a good time for me to check my face normals. So I'm going to select my treads here and I'm going to click on face normals. And it's probably a good idea for me right now, before I go too much farther, is to just go over here into the normal settings. And under normals, I'm going to select conform. And what that's going to do is it's just going to have all my normals facing the same direction. The reason I do that is because I was doing a lot of duplicating and mirroring with negative scales. And what that tends to do is that will invert the face normals. And so I'm taking care of that by selecting my mesh and then going to normals and saying conform. And that just makes sure all the face normals are facing the same direction. I can also go in here and delete all this history. So I'm going to say delete history. And then I'm going to turn the face normals off. Okay. The way you can kind of tell if your face normals are opposite is if you ever go in to your mesh and you say edit mesh, insert edge loop tool, and I'm going to do it, and it doesn't go the entire way. It usually means one of two things. It usually means that your either your face normals at this junction are not the same, so one face is pointing in while one face is pointing out, or it means that you don't have welded verts. And so I know in this case, because I can actually see it, I don't have welded vertices. So something must have went wrong here when I did my initial weld verts settings. Alright, so what I want to do here is I need to go in, and this happens from time to time, and I was trying to be very careful so that it didn't happen, but the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go in, and I was hoping to not have to do this, but it looks like this is going to be the case. I'm going to have to go in individually to all these tread rows Actually, there's a quicker way. So here's my problem, and this always happens when I'm recording the video. I can do 100% perfect when I'm not, and then record the video, and then all hell breaks loose. So what I'm going to try to do is I want to select all these verts here that are at the base of my mesh, but I don't want to select these ones here that have the very small triangle polygons. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do this in one of my orthographic viewports, where I can actually go in here very small, and I can select right below that line where those triangled vertices are. And it's really, it's probably a good thing that this happened, because you guys would be trying to follow along with the video, and I would have done it perfectly in the video, and then you would end up in this situation, and you'd be saying, how do I fix it? So here's how you fix it. I tried. I didn't quite get it to work perfectly. And so now what I'm going to do here is I'm selecting all these verts. And what I want is I want to make this so that I can just use my automatic weld. And I want to zoom in here and just see, did I get any of those little triangles? And it doesn't look like it did, so I think this is going to work. And now what I need to do is I just need to use a larger weld threshold, because what I have is some of these verts aren't completely, they're not close enough. So I'm going to go in here to mesh, and I'm going to, or edit mesh, and I'm going to say merge. And I'm going to go back to my default settings, which is 0.01, and I'm going to say apply, and you can see what happened. Those all jump together. Alright, so I believe that I've solved the problem. But going back to how you can tell if you have unwelded verts or if you have face normals that are facing opposite directions. And the way you can do that is by going into the edit mesh and say the insert edge loop tool. And if you click and it doesn't run the entire extent of the mesh, then you know that at that point you probably have either an unwelded set of verts, which is the case right here, I can see. So that's what it is in this case. We got an unwelded vert right there. So I'm going to go into Vertex Mode here, and I'm going to say Edit Mesh. Actually, I'm going to use the Merge to Center this time. I'm going to hit it with a fire hose. Okay. So now if I've got all my verts welded this time, if I go into Edit Mesh and I say Insert Edge Loop Tool and I click, it's going to run the entire length of the mesh. So we can just go and check a few of these on both sides to make sure that we got this thing done, and now it's working. So I'm going to undo that. But watch what happens. That's the one we just discovered was that our vertices were unwelded. But watch what happens if I go into face mode here and I select one of these guys. So I'm going to say show face normals first. Got to do it in object mode. Now I'm going to go into face mode here and I'm going to select one of these and I'm going to reverse it. So I'm going to say normals, reverse, and then I'm going to flip the face normals off. And if I go in here to my edit mesh and I go to insert edge loop tool again, I must have flipped that back. Hold on. So let's go into face normals. select this one, and I'm going to say normals, reverse. And so what's happened here is this one is going the opposite direction of the rest, all right? And so when I go into Edit Mesh and I say Insert Edge Loop Tool, oh crap, it's working. It doesn't always work, and I have seen it where the face normals facing the wrong directions will also cause the Insert Edge Loop Tool. But those are the two cases. Because I can't get it replicated here, I'm just going to keep moving on. Alright, so I'm going to select this guy, and I'm going to do my face normals on, and then I want to use the normals conform, and what it's going to do is it's going to make them all go the same direction. And then I'm going to go to normals and I want to reverse them. So I go to, now it's doing some weird thing with that face. Hold on one second. We got normals, conform, and then I'm going to say normals, reverse. There we go. And now I'm going to hide the face normals. Okay. And now would be a great time for me to delete the history on this mesh. Alright, so I couldn't recreate it, but trust me on this, occasionally if your face normals are going the opposite direction, the insert edge loop amongst other polygon tools will not work. Alright, so I've got 1/4 of my tire made here, and if I hit Control D, and I'm going to go ahead and move the pivot point to be at the base of the mesh, and then I'm going to hold down my V key to snap it and move it up here. And because I'm having some issues with my my patterns lining up at the seams, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do these one at a time. And so this is a good argument also for kind of just working in larger chunks. So remember, I got to make 4 of these, but I'm going to do these one at a time. So I'm going to go to Mesh, Combine, and then I'm going to go into Vertex Mode here. And I'm literally just going to be on the safe side here. And I'm just going to go down the line, and I'm selecting these verts all at once. So that I know that I'm going to get a weld on these guys. Alright? So this always happens when I'm building and explaining. Something I just kind of lose a little bit of a focus on my modeling, and I always overlook something. So this is exactly what I've done. So I'm going to go to Edit Mesh here, and I'm going to go to Merge, and because I've only selected those verts which I knew were not closer than my threshold, I can actually get those to weld perfectly. And then if I wanted to test that, I could go in here and say Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop Tool. And if it doesn't insert along the entire row, then I know that I have not successfully welded those. So that's kind of my check. So I'm going to click that, and I want to delete the history on this guy again. And then because I have 2 of them, now I just need to duplicate one more time. I'm going to make my pivot point here be the base of this. And then I'm going to hold down the V key for snap to vertex. Okay, and so now that makes a total of 4 sections of 13, which is going to give us a total number of treads of 52, which is a good number. So I'm going to select both meshes, and I'm going to say Mesh Combine. I'm going to then go into Vertex Mode here, and this is the row here that we just merged. So I need to weld all of these guys. And then it jumps up And then I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Merge, and bingo, that looks like it worked. And now if I want to check my work to make sure that in fact all my vertices are welded, I'm going to do my check, which is to go into Insert Edge Loop tool and click, and it should run all the way down. If it doesn't, that means I have unwelded verts, or I have some face normals that are facing the opposite direction. Neither one of those is good. Okay, so our tread is built, but currently it's just laying out flat. I'm going to hide my reference plane here, and if I render this out, we can just check and see that it looks pretty good. That looks really good, actually. And then I'm going to go ahead and just do another check here. Before I do so, I'm going to save this scene though. So I'm going to save this scene here, and I'm going to call this tire toot _01. And then I'm going to hit the 3 key. And I just want to see what this is going to look like all smoothed out. Because as I stated in the beginning of the video, I plan on making this mesh so that it's smoothable, poly smoothable, and that all looks good. We got no issues, so I'd say we're good to go. I'm gonna hit the 1 key to take off the smooth. It's worth noting though that this thing doesn't actually need to be smooth, because we get a good 4 edges on every edge, and this thing's gonna look good at its default polygon resolution. The reason why I'm making it so it's smoothable though is because if we decide at a later date that we needed to put a camera on here, maybe this is for a tire commercial or something, and they want to fly a camera down the tire tread or something, a la the original Star Wars Death Star scene, you'd be able to do that. So if you're modeling professionally in the film industry, you're kind of just you're doing it and making it so you're prepared for pretty much any situation. Okay, so now we got the tire tread built. What I do want to do is I want to add a few more edges on the side, and that's because we're going to end up turning these sides down a little bit to make the sidewalls of the tire. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into Edit Mesh, and I'm going to say Insert Edge Loop tool, and then this time I want to do multiple edges, and I'm going to do 3, and I'm going to put them, and I'll do 2. I'm going to put them right here on this sidewall section right there, and then the same thing on this side. The reason I did multiple edge loops here rather than adding them manually is because I wanted them to go in kind of mathematically perfect on the sides. Alright. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my animation menu set, and I'm going to create a deformer, and I'm going to do a non-linear. I want a bend. The bend deformer comes in. Looks kind of weird. It just looks like a pole going up. So what you got to do with the bend deformer is you got to give it a little curvature. So I'm going to put some curvature on it, and then what you have to do is you have to orient it with respect to your mesh. So I'm just going to grab this modifier, and I just rotate it down to -90 degrees. And now see what happens. It's magically bending my tire into position. Now what I need to do is I need to figure out what bend setting I need to input in there in order to get my tire mesh to completely bend around. Now if you do my other tutorial, I actually worked this out mathematically using the equation for the circumference of the circle. But as promised, I'm doing a tutorial here for a tire without any math. So because of that, if this were the one based on math, you just put in the equation, or you put in pi, which is I might even get this wrong. I think it's 3.142 if you round it, and that should line up perfectly. But in this case, we did not make sure that our tread was the right length for the circumference of the circle, and therefore we have to guesstimate. So I'm going to do 3.3. I probably just lost an incredible segment of viewers right there just even talking about it. So 3.3 is too much, so I'm going to do 3.31. 3.31. Ooh, that's pretty good. You know what? I'm gonna take that to the bank because that's not bad. So my tread line's up here all the way around, And then what I want to do here is I'm going to go into Vertex Mode, and I'm going to select all these guys. Notice I have these kind of stuck vertices over here on this other side. That happens from time to time in Maya where it kind of looks like they're selected. If that ever happens, you can kind of select them and then deselect them. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and try to select all these guys without selecting the other side of the tire. And I'm just going to keep going down that tread. And then remember here it jumps the tracks up a little bit and then it comes back down. It's hard to see, but you can definitely tell these aren't welded if you get in close enough. Alright. And then just in case I accidentally selected any other verts, I'm going to do a control select on the top here just to get rid of those. And then now I'm going to go into my weld and I'm going to say under polygon menu set, edit mesh, merge. And my threshold was too small, so I'm going to go into edit mesh, merge. And I need to use something higher, so I'm going to do 0.05 maybe, say apply, and that worked. And then I just want to make sure, I'm going to do like a 0.1. I want to go with something higher just in case there were some of these other ones here that didn't weld that should have. And then again, if I want to check to make sure that I welded those verts all the way around this mesh, all I got to do is go to Insert Edge Loop Tool. So Insert Edge Loop Tool, and I want to reset it. And if I click here to insert a loop, it should, if it worked, go all the way around the tire, and it did. So that means that all my vertices all the way around that tire are welded. And I'm golden here. So the other thing that you want to do, you want to watch out for, is don't delete that bend modifier. If you do, look what happens. So I'm going to undo that. What you do need to do is you need to select the mesh and say delete by type history, and then that will bake that deformation onto your mesh. Alright? And then I just want to check something. When I deleted that, I want to make sure that I didn't accidentally undo the welding on my verts here. And so it looks like I didn't. Yeah, they're still welded. Alright, so that's good. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my mesh. See how we kind of have these stuck vertices again? I'm going to try to select all and then deselect. That's kind of what you have to do sometimes. Sometimes that doesn't work, and you actually have to export your mesh as an OBJ, but I don't have time for that right now. I'm trying to keep this thing around an hour. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab my tire tread, and I'm going to say Modify, Center Pivot. And now I'm going to turn on my snaps toggles. And then what I want to do is I want to snap this tire so that its center is right there on the origin. Okay. And now the next thing that I want to do is I want to bring in another reference plane. So this one I'm going to create in the front orthographic viewport. And I'm going to say create polygon primitives plane. And I'm going to leave on my snaps because I want this one also right there at the origin. And I'm going to scale it up. And now I'm going to right click on it. And I'm going to say assign new material. And I'm going to do a Lambert. And then I'm going to click on my Lambert 3 node here and assign a color value to it, which is a file. And for the file, I'm going to use this other image that I created. And what that does is that's just going to give me my picture of my sidewall. And so I'm going to go over here into my front orthographic viewport, and I'm going to kind of scale this image up to match the extent of my tread. And what this is going to help me do is it's just going to help me nail my sidewall down a lot faster. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in order to get my sidewall modeled in there, I'm going to go into my animation menu set, and I'm going to say create deformers, and I'm going to do a lattice. And I'm going to do 2 sets of lattices here. So for the first lattice, all I'm trying to do is create my sidewall. I'm going to try to bend these sidewalls down where I created those extra 3 edges. So I'm going to go in here and I want to increase my number of divisions in U. And what I'm trying to do is I want these edges here in U to kind of line up with the extent of these 3 edges that I made for my sidewall here. Maybe just like a little bit behind it even is probably good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and say lattice point. I'm going to go into my top orthographic viewport and I just want to select the lattice points on the outside of my tire mesh. And then I'm going to go into my uniform scale and I'm going to scale these down and see what that's doing. It's kind of bending the sidewalls down a little bit so that it's making that tire profile. And so if I go into my front ortho and I go into X-ray mode, what I'm trying to do here is I just want to line up my sidewalls approximately with the sidewalls of this performance tire image that I have. And I'm just going to pull those down until I get about, it looks like about right there. Looks pretty good. And then that's it. I'm going to say OK. And same thing with the lattice. If you delete the lattice, watch what happens. Your tire will distort back. So what you need to do if you want to keep your changes is you select the mesh and you say delete by type history, and that's going to delete the lattice and keep the shape. Now the next thing I want to do for my tire to give it a little bit more character is my sidewall or my tire treads are very flat on top, and so tires on the top of the tire actually have a little bit of a bow, and on the bottom they're flat because they're contacting the ground. So what I want to do is I want to just put a little bit of a bow on overall on my entire tire. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my animation, create deformers. I'm going to do a lattice. And I'm going to do about 3 here down the center this time. And then I'm going to go into lattice point. And I'm going to select first all 3 of these guys. And I'm just going to scale them up a little bit to give my tire a little bit of a bow. And then I'm going to go ahead and deselect the outside ones and do a little bit of a uniform scale and just bow my tire up a little bit on top. Very subtle, but you'd be amazed at what the subtleties do to make your image more real, more convincing. So just that subtle bow really adds a lot. So I'm going to delete the history on this guy, and now the final thing for us to do is to model the sidewall itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is I kind of, you know what, I was going to change this, but I'm going to leave it alone. Alright, so one of the common things that I've seen on tire tutorials on the internet is for people to select the sidewall and then create it by going in here and saying, if I go into my polygon menu set, going in here and say extrude, and then extruding these guys interior and then kind of shaping them, etc. I actually don't like that method, and the reason is it kind of lacks control. And so I want to show you another method which you may not be aware of. So the method I prefer is to select this internal set of edges all the way around like I've just done, and then I'm going to go in here to modify and I'm going to say convert. And I'm going to convert this selection of edges into a NURBS curve. So I'm going to say convert polygon edges to curve, and then I'm going to open the dialog settings, and I want to do a degree 1 linear curve, and I'm going to say apply. And it's giving me an error message here. Apply. Let me pause for a second and figure out what this error message is coming from. Okay, so what had happened with my mesh here is that from time to time in Maya, when you work with a polygonal mesh that's this complicated, Maya will just kind of eventually start to flake out on you, and that's exactly what happened in this case. So it just flakes out, and the polygon starts to kind of have a memory, the polygon object, and it really it just becomes hairy, and the only thing you can do to fix it is select the object, and then you go to File, Export, Selection, open up the dialog. You always want to say OBJ Export, change the everything to off, so turn everything off. Groups, point groups, materials, smoothing, everything off. Say export selection. I always just save it as a temp OBJ. And then what I do is I create a layer for my existing object, and then I go to File, Import, and I import that new, or the OBJ that I just exported. And what it does is it just kind of cleans up your mesh, and whatever problems you may be having kind of go away. So now I'm going to right click on the mesh here and go to Edge, and there I go. I can select the entire edge loop all the way around. I'm going to go to Modify, Convert, and I'm going to say Convert Polygon Edges to Curve. I'm going to open up the dialog box here, and for degree I want to do 1 linear, and I'm going to say Apply. Okay, and then what I want to do here is I want to right click on this guy, and I'm going to go to Control Vertex, and what I'm looking for is I just want to find out where this this line begins and ends, because by default this line cannot be open, and it's probably not a good idea for me to close it either. So that's where the line starts and ends, and I want to remember that, because what I'm going to do when I build my surface, I'm going to have to weld those vertices there across. So I just want to remember that position. And what I may do to make my life easy on that note is to just create a layer and put my circle in it. Okay. So now that I have my circle selected here, I'm going to make another layer for my tire. And what I want to do here is I want to create a profile curve for my sidewall shape. Alright. So I'm going to unhide my reference plane, and I'm just going to make a quick shape in here. So I'm going to say Create Polygon Primitives, and I'm just going to do a cube here as a placeholder, and that's going to tell me how tall my sidewall needs to be. And then I'm going to pop over here into my side view, and I'm going to draw my shape here, my curve for my sidewall. Alright, so I just want to see my tire real fast. And okay. And there's my tire curve. And there's my shape for where it needs to go to hit the rim. And so now I'm going to go into my Create CV Curve tool, and I'm going to do this one linear as well. I'm going to hold down my C key for Snap to Curve, and I'm just going to snap to the top of that curve here. And then I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to draw my sidewall shape. So according to my picture, it goes kind of something like this. It comes down, and then it's kind of got this little knobby channel that some tires have. Very thin. Oops. And then it just kind of comes down around. And then tires always have this kind of lip there. And what that is that's just a lip, so it'll grab underneath the rim. All right, and now what I can do is I can select my profile shape here for the side of my tire, and I can select my path. And I'm going to go into the Surfaces menu set, and I'm going to say Surfaces, and I'm going to do an Extrude. And my Extrude, I'm going to reset the settings real fast here. I want to extrude this at Path, Component, and then for orientation I'm going to do Path Direction. For output geometry I want to do polygons. And then for type, I'm going to do quads here. And then I want to do control points. And now I'm going to say apply. And the scale is off. So I want to figure out what's going on there. Let's select my mesh here. Is it that? Oh, the reason for that is because my profile curve that I just drew for my sidewall, its pivot point is down here at the origin, and so what I need to do is I need to move the pivot point for this guy. So that it is right on the line. I hope this is it. That was it. Okay, that's one. It comes in upside down, as it often does with the guided extrude. The other problem is you can see that these radial lines are kind of not emanating towards the center. And so what I need to do is I need to get my settings tweaked in a little bit. So I want to select my path and then my curve. And I'm going to say surfaces extrude. And I did pivot point for component, and I think I'm going to try closest endpoint. No, that's not it. It's one of these settings, and I just have to poke around until I find it. Maybe it's profile normal, and I'm going to say apply. Nope. Hold on one second, I'm going to figure it out and I'll come back. Okay, so Maya can be a little finicky at times, and really can just come down to something as stupid as just didn't like the direction that I was drawing my curve, which is how it turned out to be the case. So what I did was here is I didn't accidentally. I just started trying different things because I thought my settings should have worked. I've had those settings before and had no problem with them. And so what I did was I just drew my curve here. Instead of from the top down, I drew it from the bottom up, and that solved all my problems. So I think what probably happened was that when I was drawing my curve from the top to the bottom, it was probably giving it a negative value of some kind, and Maya didn't like that. So I drew it from the bottom up, and so same process. Select the curve, select the path, and then I'm going to say surfaces, extrude. I want to do tube, at path, component, profile normal. For output geometry, I'm going to do polygons, and then tessellation method, I do control points. I say apply, and boom, it works as it should have the first time. Now the cool thing about this method, now I'm going to unhide my tire tread, is that I have my sidewall built here, and if I go into control vertex mode, look what happens. I can change the shape of the tire and have it ripple throughout the entire sidewall, and you just can't do that if you were doing that using the other method, which is just the extrude edge. All right, and so I can kind of change things after the fact. If I wanted to make my my bevel here a little bit deeper, a little bit more pronounced, I can do that. Etc. If I wanted to make the bump here, so I want to get out of vertex mode. Control vertex. If I wanted to make the nodule there where it catches the rim a little bit bigger, I could go ahead and do that. Let's say my art director comes in and says, you know what, man, I like that tire, but that's kind of more performance tire. And I say, yeah, I know, that's what we were supposed to build. No, the director changed his mind and now it's a truck tire. I could go ahead and make it into a truck tire with no problem. Alright, so what it gets you is just basically flexibility. And flexibility, as you'll learn in production environments, is always nice. Alright, so, and then I just want to make sure that I line this thing up with my sidewall in the illustration. So there is the lip for under the rim, and I want to make sure that's what catches under the rim. And then if I wanted to, again, go into control vertex mode, oops, select my curve here, go into, select my curve here, control vertex mode, and let's say I wanted to change the shape here a little bit, which I actually do. I can do that, and it's going to ripple throughout the entire tire here. I'm going to grab these guys. Alright, that looks good. So that's basically it. Our tire is done. At this point, all I have to do is select the sidewall here, select my tire, and say mesh combine. So I go to polygons mode here. Let's delete the history on both of these first, and then I'm going to say mesh combine, and then I'm going to go in here to vertex mode, and I'm going to just go ahead and weld these guys. So I'm going to say merge, and I want to use a threshold here that's very, very, very tiny. So I'm going to say 0.00. I think 0.001. No, 0.001. So 0.01 is the default. I'm going to go 0.001 and say apply. And then now I've just welded my verts here on the side. And if I render this guy out, there it is. It's a beautiful thing. And I actually jumped the gun there because I'm trying to hurry up to finish this. I forgot one last step. I'm going to hit the W key, and I want to mirror this sidewall over to the other side. So I'm going to go to insert mode, and I'm going to snap this vertex for the pivot point of this tread so that it's perfectly up here at the very top tread. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mirror. So I'm going to go into get out of pivot mode, and I'm going to go in here and go to edit, duplicate special, and I want to just mirror that guy -Z, so I'm going to say apply, and then if I move it over here to the other side, and then all I got to do is hold down the V key for snap to vertex, and it's going to snap it. And so now I know that it's lined up perfectly both sides of the tire. Now I'm going to delete the history, and then now I'm going to go into mesh, and I'm going to say combine, and then now I'm going to go into vertex mode here, and now I can weld all these vertices. So I'm going to say edit mesh, merge, threshold 0.01. That worked well for me last time. And I can get rid of my little guide curve there. And there we go. We got the performance tire welded on both sides, and it looks very good. And if I want to confirm that it looks good, all I need to do is render it. And bingo, there you go, performance tire in about an hour, probably about 45 minutes if I didn't have to explain it. Alright, so good luck to you guys, and I'm looking forward to the cool work that you're going to do. Alright.